Hi everyone, it's James here. I'm here to bring the last letter of the Serve acrostic, which we've been doing over the past few Mondays. And here is the last letter, E, which stands for evangelism, which is arguably the most important because it looks back to the final command of Jesus before he ascended into heaven, which was to go forth into all the world and preach the gospel. You know, one American preacher once said that we are all natural evangelists for the things and the people that we love most. And you often hear about young fellas when they get a new car and they're just mad to show it to you and they want to run down all the specs of that car. They're so excited about it. And you know, we would think it'd be really odd as well if a man or a woman got engaged to the love of their lives, but they were very meh about it and they didn't show real any interest, and they only really brought it up if you brought it up, and they didn't even want to show the engagement ring. We would find that very odd. You know, when we have a love for something, we have this uncontrollable urge to tell others, and we almost want to pitch it like a sales pitch, and we want others to share in that same love. Now just think about it. When we think about Jesus Christ and the love that he showed to us, that he was able to go through such unimaginable pain and suffering on the cross so that he would pay the price for people that even cursed his name, people like me who have sinned. When we see that love, how could we not just shout from the rooftops about that love? How could we not really proclaim that wonderful true news? And we also think about the urgency of the message of the gospel. You know, as one person once said, the gospel is only good news if it arrives on time. You know, time is short and the cost for rejecting the gospel is high. We need to go forth and proclaim the gospel, this life-changing message, to everybody we come into contact with. Now, when we think of mission work and evangelism, it's always good to look to church history for inspiration. We may look to Patrick, who returned to Ireland to the people that hated him in order to preach the gospel and reach them for Christ. We think of William Carey, one of the first missionaries to India, where he left the comforts of his home to go to that land and translate the Bible into the native language, which wasn't done before. We might think of Jim Elliot too, who actually gave his life for those natives in Ecuador, and we think of Elizabeth, his wife, who picked up the torch and continued to preach the gospel there. Now, we often look at the heroes of the faith and we marvel at the great sacrifice that they showed, and then we look at ourselves and we just see how we don't measure up. I know for myself, I always fear misrepresenting the gospel or not being able to answer a question that someone might have. I also am prone to excuses. Like Moses, I say that I'm slow to speech, or that people won't believe me, or that I'm just scared of what people will think. However, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul talks about the first time he arrived in Corinth, and when he was preaching the gospel, he said he came in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. Paul, this massive figure of evangelism and missionary work, came in fear and in trembling, and that's something we can maybe relate to. But he also goes on to talk about how, you know, while people around were so interested in boasting themselves with flowery language and all these powerful arguments, that he just allowed the gospel to speak for itself, to shine out of his weakness. And we too mustn't think too much about ourselves. We are only the channels, and God can use us to do great things for him. So with that said, I'd like to encourage you to get involved in the work of Serve Youth. You know, we have so many opportunities to reach out the gospel, both in a local and a global context. You know, locally, we've been involved in running children's missions out in Belfast, as well as reaching out to the community with charity work and showing the love of God to the people of Northern Ireland. We've also been involved in mission teams to Romania, to Lithuania, to Poland, to the Philippines, to Kenya, to all these various places. And it's not only just great fellowship with believers, but it's also gaining valuable experience in reaching out and gaining confidence to do it. And that is what's greatly needed. You know, the burden of evangelism can be quite heavy, but it's not one that we're expected to do alone. And with fellow believers, it can be really, really beneficial for you. So that is the final letter, E, evangelism, our great calling to preach the gospel. And I hope this has been of some encouragement to you.